board meeting. Roll call, trustee Grum. Here. Trustee Snowden.
Here.
Trustee Rogers here. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we will move to the public hearing for fiscal 2018-19 budget appropriation ordinance. I'd like to open the hearing at 6:31, I believe. At 6:31 p.m.
I'm sorry. What are we doing?
Oh, the public hearing. The budget.
Oh.
All we do here, you open the public hearing and ask the public if there's any questions on the budget appropriations or copy which we have up and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'll just do a real quick overview of it for everyone. If you've got the spreadsheet.
I did
Okay. Starting out the year, our cash on hand is $381. I'll skip the cents. Our estimated cash to be received through property tax primarily, but also through replacement tax and the foreign fire tax, be $648,730. Our estimate of expenditures is $724,450. So that would leave us with an estimated cash on hand of $288.61 at the end of the year. The way we do budgeting really is we make two budgets. We do one where we put contingencies, significant contingency amounts in each of the major areas in case something goes wrong, like a vehicle goes bad or we have some serious problems with the building. But then our working budget, the budget we manage to, the budget we report on, is that same budget without the contingencies. So the contingencies run typically $60,000. So without the contingencies, our estimated cash on hand would be $60,000 higher, $348,661. Last year, we ended up with an actual budget surplus of $57,651. We're going to roll forward $16,000 of that into this year, so that last year's contribution to surplus would be $41,651. So when then you take the projected deficit, which would be $75,719, and then remove the contingencies and add which gets down to around $15,000, and then put the $16,000 that will roll forward, which should leave us with a budget balance of $280. So that we're basically looking to, the reason we're rolling forward is, and this happens every year, we end up with some things that we thought we would purchase or expenses that we didn't, that then just get moved forward into the next year. So we rebudget those monies. Last year we also were planning to have a balanced budget where we came out with a $57,000 surplus, so we can move some things forward into this year. So that's kind of the synopsis of it. So if anybody has any questions, I'll answer.
No questions?
Okay, so I think that's it for the hearing.
Right, so do you want to make a motion to close the budget?
You
or
can
close
just
it?
announce the hearing closed at 6, whatever,
Okay,
34.
the hearing closed at 6:34. And move on to number 4, discussion and adoption of the 2018-2019 budget appropriation ordinance. Unless the board has any other discussion, we'll make a motion.
Do you want? Go ahead. Just a couple of things, points of interest that are different. We typically do a momentum budget from year to year. Things tend to be the same. The things that are a little significant this year is we put an extra $1,000 into the building operations, so we knew we had elevator issues. So we should be fine on that. I didn't include in revenue the $5,000 from North Chicago. We didn't get it last year. We got it the year before. We did not get it last year, so I didn't put it in the budget this year. So I'm just not counting on getting that from there. If we do, fantastic. But I don't want to count on
go about that.
I was just going to say, is that a call that needs to be made?
I typically try to
that's a financial thing. So I'd rather have the board handle that than
Okay.
me.
Who is the contact up there?
It's gonna be going through the mayor.
To the mayor?
With that, and I also put another $1,000 into the IT budget since we had a bunch of infrastructure issues that I think are all now resolved. We had a replacement of Ethernet switches and some routers and wireless, but everything seems to be pretty solid on that. So that's just the things that.
Do you by chance have in your office a copy of that agreement with North Chicago? Or could you put your hands on it in the next week or so? Not now.
Yeah,
I believe I have a copy on the server. A copy would be signed.
That's all right. Would you forward it to me so when I call I can reference that? Okay. All set?
That's it?
Okay, may I have a motion to adopt the ordinance number 2018-01, ordinance for budget and appropriations?
So moved. I'll second.
Motion by Grum, second by Snowden. Roll call vote, trustee Snowden.
Aye.
Trustee Grum. Aye. Trustee Rogers, aye. Motion passes.
I mentioned about we need 4 signed copies. Bob will keep 1, I'll take 3, so I can file the one with Joaquin.
Okay, I assume he's heading them down this way.
Well, I've got 2.
I've got an extra one here.
I have more to.
I've got an extra 2.
Okay, just keep sending them
I
down this
need a
way.
bunch of them.
Consideration of the minutes of the regular board meeting of Rockland Fire Protection District for June 11, 2018. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Snowden, trustee, second by Grum. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Done. Chief's report. What you got, chief?
Just a couple things. Did you receive the email that was sent, I believe, to you and I regarding, came through today from Lake County Clerk's office?
I did not look at my email today, John.
Asking for the 12th. It sounds like she might be in charge of polling places. And she's doing inspections.
Okay, you want me to set, does she had a number to call here?
I guess-
Well, if it's there, can I keep this?
Yeah, you can keep that.
I'll get in contact with her and see if she, when she wants to come out.
Okay.
Is that okay, or you want to?
Absolutely. No, that's fine.
I'll take care of that.
Like I said, it sounded like she was gonna be in the area, on the 12th.
Which should be no problem. I'll give her either a call tomorrow, or I'll email back to her and give her my cell and tell her to just contact me.
Okay. Some of the monies that we had left over at the end of last year, we did roll into upgrades around the station. As far as the radio room was repainted, refloored, as well as all the holes patched in the walls, and repainted up and down throughout this hallway. And that was completed for, I believe, under $500 that we were able to secure all that for. The other thing I'd like to follow up with the board on is the group text message we had the other day in reference to Lake County Sheriff and the license plate. I never got the name of the deputy from you, Dan, who was bringing this to your attention, so I could address it with them.
It was, I know his nickname, Bam Bam.
Bam Bam? I know Bam Bam very well, and it's shocking
Okay.
coming from him, to be honest with you. So I will
Why
get
can't I
Bam,
come up with his name?
Van Deen.
Van Deen,
Yeah.
John Van Deen.
I'll give Bam Bam a call and see if
Well,
I can-
he had called, let me know, and then I said, I texted him back, I actually copied and texted your text, and I said, if there's any further issue, I said, please have the appropriate person get a hold of me, and we'll get this corrected. And that was the last I heard.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that what you sent back sufficed. I've heard nothing more.
Okay.
And like I said, I sent back to him and said, if there's, if there's an issue with your supervisor or shift commander, get a hold of me, and we'll do whatever is legally required. And
Okay.
that was the end of it. So I don't think there's any more to do.
Okay.
But thank you for the ordinance and the shout back. I didn't think you would mind. Like I said, I
No.
copied that section because I couldn't say it any better, and sent it off to him. That was it.
Okay. I'm surprised it's coming from him, and he's been doing that job a long time. I
You know, when I know something, I'll address it. When I don't, I'll ask questions. So I asked questions this time. Tammy, last page is yours to sign.
Okay, and the last thing I have as far as the elevator goes, are we now compliant with everything that needed to be done?
The call that I got from the serviceman as he was finishing up said, "You are totally good now, everything is taken care of, you should have no."
Okay, and just so you guys all know, the last time that they were out here that I talked to them, which was almost 2 years ago, that I had contact with them, they said because it was a Lula and not an elevator, that it did not meet the same requirements of an elevator.
And the only other contact that I had is I talked to Bob Stringer, only because I literally walked into him at the county building. And he said, "Thanks for taking care of the elevator." And I said, "Didn't know anything about it until we had third notice." I said, "I did speak with John, and he said that he thought it was under a different requirement because it wasn't a standard type of elevator." I didn't remember Lula.
Right.
And he said, "Nope, it's under the same criteria as an elevator." And he said he had seen you at some electrical.
Is this one of the inspectors?
Yeah, Bob Springer.
Yeah.
Springer, I said Stringer, Springer, potato. And he said, "Oh," he said, "I saw Mike Gissel 2 or 3 months ago, and we talked about it. I thought he'd let you know." And I said, "He didn't, it must have slipped his mind." I said, "And I didn't know anything about it until we saw the third notice." And I said, "Then we jumped on it." He said, "Well, we don't want to put fines on the fire department." I said, "And I appreciate that. As soon as I got it, we handled it."
Yeah, I think my only concern is when we finally got into the room back there, all of the past violation sheets were all stuck.
And that,
right in there.
I had not had a single one of those.
And I thought, well,
sent to
somebody
me.
had to let them in the building, and somebody had to let them into that room. And
Yeah.
those sheets never got back to us.
No.
And it's unfortunate.
Last thing I have is that, I don't know if you gentlemen remember the proposal from the outside vendor for phone and internet. They came down here and did an evaluation and sent us a proposal. He keeps contacting me, looking for a status update as far as if it's something you guys are interested in not in doing. I know that there was an issue of TDS.
Is this the Comcast guy that's calling you?
No, he's basically a headhunter for service. He goes out and shops around, and he's the one that brought us back the internet pricing, the phone pricing, and was one that brought it to my attention that TDS was closing its doors or going to be bought out by another company.
Well, Comcast had given us a proposal.
Yeah, we did work with Comcast directly, and they gave us a good proposal, but the problem was the ban on the contract, but we're just about done on that, so I think that's.
So we haven't been notified as far as TDS shutting.
No.
Well,
Closing.
ironically, I had some phone issues at the grill, and TDS is our carrier, and not only did I talk to the guy on the phone, but I talked to the service guy, and I said, "Yeah," I said, "who are you guys going to be merging with? You're just shutting down." And both of them looked at me like I had a third head and said, "We just bought another company and we're expanding." And I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Well, fix the phone."
Yeah, I mean, I'd done a little market research when that first came up, and I did not find anything that indicated that, you know, it doesn't mean they're not, but as you know, with these brokers, these third-party brokers, you can't take what they say
Sure.
with a grain of salt. If they're, you know, they don't care, they skim a piece off the top of any deal that they broker,
Right.
so.
So when the TDS contract comes up for renewal, then that's when we can make the jump.
So should I just let them know at this point we're status quo for the time being?
Tell them we're good right now, thanks a lot.
I think we're only a couple of months out, so, but my thought is we'd likely end up with Comcast. We'll certainly check, but Comcast. And the nice thing, unlike with the home stuff where I got a deal for you, and 2 years later you mortgage your house to pay for it.
Right.
On the business side of it, they don't do that. I mean, the price they give you is like pretty much guaranteed. It doesn't go up.
Okay.
The internet is very expensive, but if you bundle the internet with phones, particularly with 3 phone lines, it becomes quite reasonable. So,
That's all I have for right now.
Okay, Chief Citizen Committee report.
Looking to move forward with that. I apologize, like I said, I was able to give the documents to Mike at the last meeting. I was out of town, and looking to move forward with it.
So explain to me what the purpose of this is, or what the focus is, or what's going on.
So this was something that was brought up probably about 8 months ago. And originally, I thought it was assigned to you and I to find people to sit on this after the board had discussed it and approved it. I don't know what happened and why it didn't go up, but then Bob brought it up at the Lake Forest Libertyville proposal. Marching forward with it. I didn't receive any names from anybody, so I was able to contact 3 of our residents who have all agreed to show interest in giving an unbiased review of these services currently, as well as the proposed ones that are coming in.
I guess my question was, and I was thinking about this after the last meeting, is on the last page there, it shows who the board member is that sits on it and who the 3 citizens are. But in the document itself says that the trustee will appoint the 3 citizens that will be on it. And yet Carl said he had not seen this document. So,
And like I said, there
you're
was no
saying
movement from the board, so I contacted residents to see if they would be interested in doing it.
Okay, and the criteria you used for that was what?
Residents who not only are local residents, but business owners, who I know have shown significant interest, invested interest in the community. Not the fire department, but just within the community.
And again, I'm just trying to understand, what are they gonna focus on, the 2 proposals, is that the idea?
The first thing would be evaluating the way that we're currently doing things.
Okay,
And are the residents happy? Are they satisfied with the services they're getting? Are there things that we could be doing better?
okay.
I don't think you can compare proposals to something unless there's a self-evaluation done first.
That's fine. I would certainly suggest, well, Carl can't be there at that particular point, but that the committee sit down with each one of the 3 trustees, and, because I think the 3 of us
Individually.
Yeah, that's, got it.
Makes sense.
You know, have been immersed in this for the last several years, so as you move forward, I would think that would be probably the first thing to do, is to try to sit down individually with us and
Well, I think the first thing that needs to be done is they just, at least, in my opinion, they need an education on the fire service
Okay.
and what an engine is and what a truck is, and so that they have a better understanding as far as what they're looking at.
Okay. If that's what you'd like to do, John, I'm certainly not going to object to it.
Okay.
So,
Brian, did you get, you said you were gonna look into, board committee versus non-board committee versus open meetings versus non-open meetings?
Yeah, a committee appointed by the board, it's a committee of the board, is subject to the Open Meetings Act. On the other hand, if this is truly a chief's citizen committee and you don't have a trustee or a trustee can sit in, but the committee's making no decisions, the committee at most would be offering insights and recommendations to the board, then the Open Meetings Act wouldn't apply because it's got no authority to do anything other than look.
is it okay for a trustee to be part of that committee?
We're into the gray here. There's some that say if you got a trustee there, it has to. There's some that says no because it's the chief's committee, but they want to have a trustee there because you guys are the corporate authority, and how would they know what the corporate authority is thinking without having a trustee there? So we talked to John, and it's like they said, well, if it's truly a chief's committee where all they're doing is investigating and reporting back to you collectively, the gang of 3, you're probably okay. If you start giving them authority to do things like spend, now we got issues.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask the question, even on a committee of the board, what if they don't have any authority, all they can really do is recommend anyways? Yes, but as you bring that up, I also mentioned in certain circumstances, they may be authorized to have some authority to spend money, but we'll see.
Would we clear up the gray area if John had the committee and different trustees just sat in at the chief's request at the different meetings? So Carl could come to one, and then, like I said, they can talk to me, they can talk to Bob.
I wouldn't recommend that.
Okay.
From the perspective of continuity too. I think it's what your suggestion, I think is really very, very well taken. That the group should meet, and obviously if I can't do it with each of you because you have very valuable insights. but it's a working group, and you need that continuity of one person to, I think, to work with you. On the other hand, I have absolutely no objections I have no objection to doing those open meetings. The only issue I see with that is just when it makes scheduling a little bit tighter, because you have to be a little bit more formal and on your times. You can't just sort of meet ad hoc, but it matters not to me.
Yeah, I mean, I just advise against giving them authority to act. Let them, they can recommend till the cows come home.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
you're the appointed corporate authority.
Okay.
So I just think that as to open meetings, I mean, Carl's right. Being subject to the Open Meetings Act is not the end of the world. You gotta have a notice, you gotta have an agenda, you gotta have minutes, you know. I can't envision they would go into closed session.
Hope not.
You know, but, you know, in my world, all sorts of crazy things happen. So, I mean, it's not an end of the world if you do, but, you know, perhaps that's something we could, you know, see how the first meeting goes. I mean,
I would like to attend one of the meetings, because I think all three of us have different views and different insights. And to just focus on one trustee all the time, I think you're gonna get one point of view.
sure.
But I'm wondering, how then do you handle that, so that if I want to attend a meeting, how do the others know that they can't be there, or?
Well, one of the things that,
Where gets the stick?
one of the things that I said first off that we do in one of the first meetings, go ahead and set a reasonable timeline for kind of looking at everything. And maybe that's something after the first meeting we can kind of set. You know, if Carl were to attend the first meeting, we can say, okay, meeting 3, 4, and 5 are going to be, you know, attended by each of the trustees to give their insight and their opinion.
The other way you could do it, the safe way is follow the Open Meetings Act, post notice and agenda and all of them, and then one of you say Carl's a member of the committee, that's fine. The other two could be in the audience, you know,
And just listen?
talk till the cows come home.
Right. Yeah, because it's on, you posted it and.
You post it, the only thing, somebody's gotta take minutes, that's all.
That's to the committee. Okay. Let's see here, anybody have anything else for the chief?
I have a couple items, but I was gonna wait till the.
Okay.
13.
Okay, then we'll go then. Public comment, if anybody from the public have anything they would like to address the trustees with, now is your time. Nobody? Okay, number 9, attorney's report.
The only thing I have to report is that I asked John Kelly about the expenditure of funds for Freedom of Information Act and Open Meetings Act. He said in the last 2 months, we've only responded to one. It was that global one on salaries where we said we didn't have anything. So it's like 0.3 an hour. I don't have the number, but it's
Good.
going to be marginal.
Good, okay, thank you. Treasurer's report, it's Brian.
Okay. Currently, in Lake Forest Bank and Trust, capital $36,397.28. Lake Forest Bank and Trust checking $293,454.27. Lake Forest Bank and Trust in reserve is $274,107.27. Petty cash is $29.05 for a total of $603,987.87. You know, I don't have a good comparison because the budget isn't in yet.
Now we can enter.
Now we can enter it, now that we've passed it, so that'll be in the next meeting.
Okay. Can I have a motion to accept the treasurer's report as presented?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Grum, second by Snowden. Roll call vote. Trustee Snowden.
Aye.
Trustee Grum.
Aye.
Trustee Rogers, aye. Approval of outstanding invoices.
All right. Lake Forest Bank and Trust, building loan $7,500, TDS utility $304.97, May payroll $29.59.20, $69.13.14, $222.87, $425.56, $425.56, $371.45, $557.15, $148.57, and $293.99. Then we have Ace Hardware for $65.57.
And you got the split on that, or the receipts on that?
I do upstairs.
No, as long as you have them, I'm not gonna.
Oh, yeah,
I'm not asking
definitely.
you if it was.
It wouldn't be on here
Yeah.
without.
Yeah, this time of year, it's usually stuff to get the trucks spiffy for the parade.
Yes.
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 Okay,
All right, Lake County Collector, $30.45. Groot, $95.39. Marijuana Equipment, $145. North Shore Gas, $219.21. American Gas is $24.50. Attorney's fees, $4,912.50. Comment, $863.13. Lake County Public Works for the water, $65.01. City card, $764.79.
on that, how much is it?
$764.79.
Okay, on the breakdown, it's $927.73.
I had some overlap and a credit.
Okay,
I don't know, it was an unusual credit, I forgot to get an explanation.
okay, and all this,
Medical service.
I think some bags were returned.
Okay.
okay.
EMS bags were returned.
And the two that are missing here, I assume they're building supplies.
Oh, there's a
you have-
huge laundry list of
Okay.
those, very long. There's a lot of batteries, we got AA, AAA, C, D, some other types of batteries.
Okay, all of it
Copy
makes sense.
paper,
John,
soap.
we've looked at all that stuff,
Those receipts I have not from Amazon, but I can.
No, but
Did
I'm
you see
saying
mine?
you understand what all these purchases are?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, as long as you're clear with
Yep.
them.
I'm fine.
Huh?
Majority of this, the larger expenses were for the communications room.
Okay, well, no, the Amazon stuff
Let's
that's
do Amazon for building
the
supplies.
building supplies.
Those, I have not seen the
When you get a
details on
chance,
it,
just
but-
take a quick peek
Yep.
at them, make sure that they're all, legit.
And,
So,
what
Okay.
was the list?
All right, next.
The supplies. Works, there were two invoices, $2,947.55, $7,435.17. MES, for 25103. University of Illinois, $300. Wax Bank, $776.44 for fuel, and Workman's Comp, $7,172.
Okay, what was the municipal emergency
MES.
services for the motor vehicles, 25103?
I'll have to look that
I'll
up.
have to find out.
Okay,
Should bring a folder up for seeing.
that's all right, just curious as to what was
Would that
spent.
be not motor vehicles, could that be gas for the,
Well, that would be under
Quad.
Might have been the
wax,
gauge.
wouldn't
They
it?
replaced one of the gauges for the engine.
that's right. I'll find out what it is, but MES is somebody who we routinely purchase from.
Okay.
And then the Costco charges?
Well,
You saw
that's
those,
what I
yeah.
just went through.
Sure.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the outstanding checks in the amount of $46,325.70?
Second.
Motion by Snowden, second by Grum. Roll call vote. Trustee Snowden. Aye. Trustee Grum. Aye. Trustee Rogers, aye. Update discussion on Lake Bluff, Lake Forest, Louisville proposals. I can jump on this first. I met with Brian today and am continuing discussions with Lake Forest and Libertyville on their proposal. That's really it. We've looked over it and numbers still aren't what they need to be to make it something that I think is affordable for this district.
Dan, even, I had an opportunity to look over it, I was able to obtain a copy of it. Based on even the reduced number they gave us at the 3%, we're broke in 4 years.
That's what I just said.
Yeah, so I don't know where they're coming from or how they think that would work, but
The document was disseminated to the trustees with the express condition that it not be released to other than trustees. It was a talking points only tentative, subject to revision based on the conversations. That was some of the conversations we were going to have. That was one of the big points that they're still at the drawing.
So one of the trustees released the document. Please don't do that when the attorney asks not to.
I take great exception to that. I don't believe any of these trustees do
I don't know how, well, Brian's the only one that had it.
There are
I
plenty
have
of other
information,
people.
I have information that suggests there may be other sources of the leak, not in this room.
That's too bad.
But
I
anyway.
didn't make the inference that it was you.
Well,
I was,
kind of-
no, I'm throwing it at the three of us.
Yeah.
No, it's meant to the three of us. It's
But-
not
but
meant
I-
at you, Carl. believe me.
Let me second that.
Yeah.
When we get documents like, that's why normally I copy John and Mike on all that stuff. Here, it was given to us expressly
Right.
on the condition that it was a tentative draft for talking points only.
It was said draft.
Subject to renewal, subject to revision, and that's why I sent it only to the three of you, oh, and John. But that was all, and it
We'll
wasn't.
tell John to knock it off.
Yeah, really, it was John who did it. He's not in the room. So that's why when we have things like that, I generally send it to as many people as I can, but there's times when I can't. So,
Dan, just as a word of friendship, if you're referring to the IGA,
Which IGA, David?
the one that came in the revised proposal from Libertyville,
The one that said draft? Mm-hmm.
and this is a word of friendship. Yes, it's out there, and it didn't come from anybody on the Rockland Fire Protection District. So, as you just had that conversation, I don't want any of you here to think that how it got out to the public domain was from anybody here.
And that's good to know, and I didn't, the comment was just don't release stuff that says draft, so, you know, again, it doesn't, for me personally, I don't really care who sees it. I mean, I really don't. If somebody had asked me to see it, I'm okay with it, with anybody seeing anything other than when the attorney says to the trustees, don't share it, then I say, okay, if that's what he says, then that's what we do. And that was it.
And that's
So,
why I say I offered the comments
yep.
of friendship. It didn't come from any of you guys, okay? So, and I would want you to feel better about that. It came from somebody in one of the other parties.
Okay. Interesting to know. That's all I've got on the Libertyville Lake Forest front. Carl or Bob, you guys got anything else? We got just a quick update from Drew the other day.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I have a question, but it's pretty speculative, so, which is, I mean, where do you think the Libertyville Lake Forest want to go? I mean, you can only go so low, or you get into the issue of we're not paying our fair share. I mean, do you think that there's still room?
They keep asking to meet and talk. So that's all I can tell you. When they call and say, we'd like to meet and talk about this, I say, okay, we'll meet and talk about it.
And I would just offer this too, I was a little taken aback by the form that proposal came in, that while in the cover letter, it's always referred to as a proposal, it's in contract language with signing, and as far as my review of it, it's so far away from being anything that's executable. It has holes a mile wide in it, things that aren't addressed. So it's just, but it gives the impression of, okay, we're turning this from a proposal into a contract. I'm just really very concerned about being presented with something and say, okay, it's time to sign.
Well, it said draft across the front of it, and I don't know by however form they want to put it together, I highly doubt that they felt that they were going to get it returned to sender with 3 signatures on it.
Yeah, but wasn't the tail end of that set up where it was set up for signatures?
It was set up for signatures.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
It had a date it
But
started.
yeah, I think the biggest thing that took me back was
So much
the
for
August
draft.
1st start
Well,
date.
again, I don't know what to do with it other than when I got it accepted. You know, if it walks up to me and says, here, and we'd like to discuss this, I go, okay, and I read it. And then I gave it to Brian, and Brian said, it's in draft form, it should stay amongst the board right now. It's strictly a document to discuss, and I said, okay, and that's where I left it.
But it makes you, to me anyway, a little questionable at the tail end when they have a line set up for you guys to sign it.
And I'll tell you
It's a
from,
little bit more than just a draft, at least in my opinion.
Trustee Stoblen provided some comments, and I had a chance to talk to him about it, and I said, I'm not bothered by the format. I like detailed formats like that, because for that to come to us, both the Lake Forest and the Libertyville attorneys would have had to bless it. If they had sent me something less than that, I would have been surprised. That would show.
The detailed format is one thing, but the details that were missing out of the format were huge.
As I said, we had, I don't know, what were we there, about an hour?
Yeah.
Hour and 20 minutes.
Yes, we were.
So,
Number 13,
Okay.
Lake Bluff Response Agreement clarification, discussion, action, trustee Brown.
I hate revisiting this constantly, but I don't seem to be able to get answers that make any sense. When I started on the board, I asked a couple of questions, and one of them involved looking into the call volume, where those calls come from. And that's when it was discovered that, you know, there's an unequal amount of calls that we run to Lake Bluff as compared to what they run to us. And I questioned you, John. I said, well, what are the guidelines? And you said, well, we never go anywhere east of Green Bay Road. That was your first response to me. I thought, well, okay. And then with preceding weeks after that, it became very evident that we did go to calls east of Green Bay Road.
Fire calls,
And the ambulance calls.
at times.
Yeah.
Back then, yes.
Okay. And then we had some discussions about ambulance calls, and you said, well, they were mistakes by dispatch, that dispatch had made a mistake and that it needed to be corrected and that you would take care of it. We continued to get called for ambulance calls on the east side of Lake Bluff. So when I met with, or I asked you if there was some written agreement that we had with Lake Bluff spelling out exactly what it is we respond to. You said no. I met with Chief Graff and Drew Irvin, and they said there was. And
At the
at
time, I
last-
told you there was an ARA agreement that would have been up in the trustee's office, is what I had said to you. That I was not a part of writing.
Okay. Well, I received two documents at the last meeting, one of which is an interdepartmental memorandum that was between you and Chief Graff. Was it your understanding that that was something that you could determine or agree to, or is that something that normally the board would have to agree to?
It's an operational response, so it would be falling under me.
Well, it's an agreement determining what we respond to and what we don't. I would think that would be something that the board would at least be made aware of.
I would concur.
It's an operational thing as far as who's going to respond to what and where.
Yeah, but don't you feel some responsibility committing our department where we pay guys to be here and we pay them to go on calls, and we're running 5 times as many calls to Lake Bluff as they run to us, which costs us money, the taxpayers. When you're committing those kinds of funds as a fire chief, I would think that the board should be made aware of it and either agree or say, you know, no, that's beyond what we see the scope of our response being.
So, the one thing I can say is that we do have a reciprocal response from Lake Bluff, correct?
I don't know.
Does
No, hold
Lake
on one
Bluff
second. Hold on one
respond
second.
to our ambulance calls?
Yes, they do.
With what?
Their personnel in 570 or 520 if it's a traffic crash.
Okay, if we're, well, all right, and that, I'm talking about your average, you know.
Like today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
average ambulance call, somebody falls. And
Correct.
We're responding with 2 medics in our vehicle, and we're getting an ambulance from Lake Bluff. What need, I mean, just as much as I don't feel that when Lake Bluff is getting their response plus an ambulance from Lake Forest, why did they need us on the same hand, I hate thinking that we're dragging Lake Bluff out here for somebody who fell down and skinned their knee.
Well, and with the common sense that my people and the Lake Bluff people have, they'll return them en route and stop the response from them coming in.
But
But I would like to get back to something else
Okay.
before we move even further. We just acknowledged we get a reciprocal response from Lake Bluff, correct?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking you.
Yes, we do, of any kind. Of any kind, whether it be fire alarms, whether it be traffic crashes, whether it be ambulance calls. We do have a response that comes from Lake Bluff.
We have an agreement,
Yes.
a written agreement.
Well, you
I
have-
don't know, John, I'm
you have-
asking you.
Okay, and I'm telling you, you have the ARA agreement as well as in this interdepartmental memo that we did when we did the dispatch changeover so that we could provide the highest level of service, not only to our residents, but the Lake Bluff residents, and to make sure that there were no calls being missed or dropped. The point that I'm getting at is this. We actually receive a response from Lake Bluff. The amount of times we get reciprocal response from the city of Lake Forest, when we're going to their hospital 3, 4, 5 times a week sometimes, or the amount of times we get the reciprocal response from Libertyville, when we go to Abbott Park numerous times, I can tell you if you run the percentages, we're getting a higher rate of return from Lake Bluff than we are from Libertyville or Lake Forest.
So here's my question. Today, and only because I drove by it, there was a call on the bike path that someone had fallen on a bike.
Okay.
When I went by there was a Lake Forest ambulance, there was one of the Kaluchka boys who drives the white truck, there was a Lake Bluff squad, and there was Rescue 44 for a kid that fell on a bike.
Okay.
So my question is whether he fell on the bike there or further up the way or whatever, and Rescue 44 is up there doing their thing, and someone in Knollwood needs a call for service. Rescue 44 is tied up on a call that they don't really need to be on, do they?
I can't speak to it because I was not on the call, so I don't know the status of the kid. But I can tell you this, if it was my kid that was hurt right there,
Yeah.
I would want the quickest response I possibly could get to get the treatment for that kid.
Well, Lake Forest ambulance was there,
I can tell you I heard it over the radio.
right? I did
We were
too.
there within about 30 seconds of the call going out.
Right.
The response from Lake Forest ambulance is probably, I'm guessing, don't hold me to this, is 4 to 5 minutes.
But I would imagine that once the ambulance gets there, and again, if there's nothing
They're
really,
available.
really serious, then our guys are available.
They're
That call
available.
comes in,
Exactly.
they're, boom, they're
If a
gone.
second call comes in when something's going on, if there's people there that are available,
Right.
they're gonna clear from that call and go to the next call. It's
Okay.
always been like that.
Okay.
For years, it's always been like that. If those people are locked in and they need that many people to treat that critical person, if that's the case, then other people will be called in to cover the second call. It's always been that way.
But if we're going by these agreements and the examples that were put in here by Lake Bluff, a perfect example here, it says, it's expected practice for firefighters, EMTs, paramedics, and line officers from both departments to respond on EMS calls in each other's towns if you are within close proximity to the call on the initial dispatch. Now, I would expect any EMT, paramedic, or whatever to do that regardless. If
That's
he's in
what
his
it's
own
not
town or
specifying people
anywhere
on
else.
duty, it's specifying if you're just
Exactly.
driving
I
by
would
and
expect them
happens.
to do that, regardless. If we had a paramedic that was driving through Waukegan and saw it, I would
Absolutely.
expect him to stop. Okay, so it says, example, a Lake Bluff EMT hears a call for someone choking at McDonald's, and he's pulling out of Walgreens. Perfectly, I can understand that. Example 2 is a Knollwood EMT hears a call for a child drowning at the Lake Bluff pool, and he's at Green Bay and 176. Certainly. But these examples don't necessarily say that they're in a department vehicle,
Correct.
okay? Now, when we get a call for a knee injury at Lake Bluff Station, and we respond with 2 paramedics and our rescue from here to go there, that's not exactly what I would call in the vicinity.
You're talking about 2 separate things. You're talking about guys who are off duty is what number 5 would refer to,
Right.
and driving by versus guys who are staffed in the station.
But this is exactly the way that they framed it in this document,
That who framed it?
Lake Bluff. I'm assuming this came from Lake Bluff and you were part of it.
Well,
and signed
you're
it.
assuming wrong because this was jointly written by David and I together.
Okay.
Why are we, oh, I thought you were motioning. Why would we be responding to a call at Lake Bluffs Station for a knee injury?
When was this?
It's a target hazard.
I'm sorry?
It's one of our target hazards. They have target hazards, and we have target hazards. Public safety building, if there's an incident in a public safety building, yes, they come in for that, or in the downtown area. If it were on at 100 East Washington, no, they wouldn't be dispatched to that. But it was the public safety building, yes, they're dispatched to that.
But when you talk about
Is it
target
for the
areas,
school?
a knee injury at any target area doesn't necessarily activate an automatic response.
You're talking about the knee injury, Bob, at the school.
No, there was one at the school and there was one at your station.
I was actually on this
He
call,
was
so I
actually
can
on the
speak to
tennis
that.
Okay.
They were committed to another call going on in their town, so we were called to assist them.
But why are we when Lake Forest is coming?
Because we have a faster response time into Lake Bluff than Lake Forest does.
But for a knee injury?
Well, speaking of
We
the
don't
target
know what
hazard,
it was. We don't know the extent of it. They dispatched it out as a trauma. They did not say what the description
No, it came in
of
as
was.
a knee injury.
Yeah,
I
we don't know.
listened to the call.
If you have a dislocated knee, I would expect that we're gonna have someone there to stabilize and administer medication within a proper amount of time. We don't know what station Lake Forest ambulance is coming from. We don't know what conditions they're facing responding, so we need to be the fastest
So
vehicle
then
there
our
as soon as possible.
understanding is that any ambulance call in Lake Bluff would respond.
No, as the only reason that we went to that was because they were tied up on another call, is my understanding.
That is correct. They were already on another medical call at the time that call was dispatched.
So what are you saying, we shouldn't have gone? Because it
I'm
was just a
trying
knee
to,
injury?
I'm trying to determine whether there's a need for that. I mean, normally when there's an ARA, it's an agreement between two communities for high hazard areas, such as Lake Forest Hospital, such as Lake Bluff School, and they're talking about situations where a lot of people could be in danger. If you had a fire alarm at Lake Bluff School, yes, I could see that being an ARA, no problem. When you have a report of a child with a knee injury at Lake Bluff School, that doesn't really fall under a high hazard target area for the purposes of what ARAs are designed for. So all I'm saying is we could reduce a number of calls without endangering anybody and save the taxpayers of Knollwood money that it doesn't cost Lake Bluff to respond to us.
Okay, and we can, and I can revisit the ARA agreements with Chief Graff, and I don't have a problem with that, but I could see if it was taking away from our residents.
Well, how do we know that it's not though? If you responded to an ambulance call on the east side of Lake Bluff, and as you get there, now say Lake Forest is not there yet, you can't release that patient to someone of lesser care.
You did this job long enough that you can play the what if game all day long. You can play it all day long. What if Station 3's not there? What if Station 1's not there? What if Lake Forest Station 1's not there? We can what if everything all day long.
Yeah, but I don't think it's a what if, it's kind of trying to understand the daily calls that we're responding to, and do we need to respond to them? That's the question I think that's here, and I don't have the answer to the question, John, that's why we're having a discussion to understand it.
Yeah, I'm
There
just
was
trying to
another call,
understand
there were
this.
2 calls today, the other one was, or that I heard, there were probably more. There was another call over the industrial park, I missed the address. but-
71 South Waukegan Road for the medication overdose.
Right, and my question is just simply, Lake Forest and we were both dispatched to that. And again, I don't know, I'm asking, does Lake Forest is getting paid to go there, obviously. And do we need to go there? I don't know that. That's what I'm trying to understand. It seems as though we run a lot of Lake Bluff calls every day.
So, and put it in your mind sense of this. What happens if that was your mom at the doctor's office who accidentally took too much of something?
I'd be upset at the doctor, for one, but
Absolutely.
beside the point. I don't know, John. I don't have the answer to all these questions. Like you said, it's what if. I guess what we're trying to get across to, or trying to ask and trying to understand is, again, it seems as though we're responding to a larger percentage of Lake Bluff calls than they are to us. And I talked to Drew about this way back when, and said, listen, I'm not trying to to say don't, or we should, or we shouldn't, but there's a cost of doing business, okay? And whether you settle up every month, every 6 months, whatever, I think it's worth us looking at with Lake Bluff, and I asked Drew this well over a year ago, that there should be some type of a compensation back and forth with the fact that we're running on a budget of our residents' money as well.
Absolutely.
And if we're, and I'm using round numbers, so don't hold me to these numbers. If we respond to 200 calls to Lake Bluff, and they respond to 100 calls of ours, and I don't care if it's $50 a call, I don't care what it is, there needs to be some kind of an offset, because we're running our fuel, our truck, our guys, and we're taking them out of service out of our area. And it's just something I think that needs to be looked at.
And that's fine,
And
and that's
again,
fine,
I'm
but
not-
I think you also have to then, like I said, throw it back on the other communities as well. To where Lake Forest can probably go ahead and say they respond to 1% of our calls.
Right, we don't have an agreement with them.
The hell we
What
don't.
difference does that make?
To, well,
But they truly focus on high hazard targets. They don't expect you to show up to all their ambulance calls, although technically we do when it's in the industrial park. Those are their calls, and we're showing up.
Correct.
They're not asking you to show up to an ambulance call, on South Green Bay Road. Whereas we're getting sent to ambulance calls all over Lake Bluff. And Lake Forest is still getting paid to do that job. And they still show up. And they have for years and years and years.
Correct.
So I guess I'm just trying to understand, not that we shouldn't be responding to some of Lake Bluff's calls, but I think it should be more selective than what we're doing. And the documents seem to just kind of be catch-alls to say, whenever we call you, you come. And I don't think that's the true purpose or meaning of an ARA. An ARA is not a catch-all for everything. An ARA is specific to target areas where there could be a large loss of life if there truly is something going on.
Correct. And when this was written was during the transformation and transfer over of us splitting dispatch centers and parting ways to where we're not on the same frequency. And there were multiple failures within that. So therefore, it came down to us telling our dispatch centers, we don't care who gets the call, whether it be Countryside or whether it be Lake Glenview, tone it out. Somebody's going to respond. Because that's what we were dealing with, was the unknown of who's going to get this call, where's the call going to get lost, is the call going to get toned?
But I don't get the impression that's been an issue for a long time. I mean, yes, I realize that during the transition, it probably was an issue.
It was.
I don't know that I'm not hearing that that's a problem now, or that it has
Probably
been.
about the last year, no, year and a half, no.
Okay.
Thus, that also that time frame you're talking about when we were running to the far end of Lake Bluff, that was during that time to where Chief Graff and I talked about, because we were having these issues, towing everybody on every call.
But a lot of these calls have been within the last year and a half.
Specifically where?
Well, I gave a list to the chief at the last discussion I had with him. And all I got back was, they fall under our agreement. Well, the way I'm looking at it, everything falls under our agreement.
And if that's the case, and everything's gonna be under the agreement, you're gonna go to each other's, again, I just think that, and I would feel the other way as well. If we were responding to 100 calls and Lake Bluff was responding to 200 calls, I would say, hey, we deserve to give them a little bit of juice. They're responding to twice as many calls as what we are. I just think there needs to be a little bit of a balancing off. This is our residents' money.
And Dan,
Yeah.
I've taken that to heart, and that's
Okay.
why for the last 4 years, we have come in under budget every single year. So as far as managing the residents' money the best way that I've been able to,
I didn't say
I've
that.
tried.
John, I haven't said you haven't managed the residents' money. I'm talking about getting paid for our guys, the wear and tear on our vehicles, the fuel, and everything else for running more calls to Lake Bluff than they run to us.
And, okay,
And the liability of the
but then
addition.
that on top of that,
Now, if you think that's wrong and you don't think that should be, and
no.
again, hear me
No,
out
no,
now.
no. If that's something you want me to take on, by all means, I will go ahead and do that. But the trustee's responsibility for this district is fiscal, which is, in my opinion, this falls under fiscal responsibility of approaching Lake Bluff for those monies.
I
If
did.
you want me to handle it,
You want me to go back and handle it then, or Bob to handle it, and come up with a dollar amount?
Well, you should. If you want
Okay.
an ARA rewritten, then the chiefs will sit down and rewrite something if you
Okay.
like. Numbers, respectfully, it's that table right there.
Okay, but that's
I
why we
mentioned
gotta
that
have
to you
this
at the last
discussion.
meeting. It really,
Well,
You
when
guys
these,
got it.
when
We're
these
standing over here.
agreements affect our budget, which they do because of the number of calls that we run additionally, you're saying it should be, our job should be fiscal. Well, that's about as fiscal as it gets, is how you make decisions that affect our budget.
And where is it affecting it other than fuel and wear and tear?
Liability, the, you know, the,
Liability costs are fixed, but liability is not fixed. If the guys get hurt on a call to
Yeah.
Lake Bluff isn't gonna pay for the guys, are they?
I mean, the more calls you run, obviously, the
Absolutely.
greater the chance that you're gonna have an
Absolutely.
accident.
Absolutely. And if you would like for us to revisit the ARA agreements, we certainly can do that.
Well, I think it should be revisited with the understanding that we're truly operating with an ARA agreement, not a catch-all, you know, respond to everything agreement. We should be focusing on high hazard areas, high hazard possibilities, and they should be for, not for a minor accident at that facility, but they should be for, you know, fire alarms or you know, explosions, things like that, where you need people responding right away, because if there truly is something, you need to have as many men there as you can get quickly. But when it comes in as a knee injury at the school, that's not a high hazard situation.
it was mentioned that we're out on a call, and that's why we were called in. So you have to.
No, that was the one at the fire station.
That's what we're talking about, the knee injury.
I'm talking about the one at the grade school. It was the same thing, right before that, the same day.
Okay, well, personally, if we got any kids hurt in any community, they should get the best attention that's available, so. I don't
I
see
think
anything
that's
wrong
why
with.
they're paying Lake Forest,
Right,
is to get an ambulance there.
right. And some of the local people can get there quicker a lot of times than the ambulance can. So for our kids, I think that's a good thing to do, but that's just me.
Perhaps the road forward would be to have the chiefs review the ARAs that we have and revise them based on this discussion and come back to the board and discuss it so you know if it improves.
I think
or
when I
improves
talked to
by-
Chief Graff and I asked him, I said, well, where are we responding? And I think he mentioned the downtown area, the school, and the industrial park. And I could see those as high hazards for high hazard situations, not for every little issue. And I think that's where we should focus.
But that's fine. Lake Bluff statistically responds to more calls than we do. And those target hazards have their share of calls every year. You're still gonna run an out of balance number. You're not gonna get this 50-50. It's just, it's not gonna work. Might be able to tighten it up a little bit.
And I'm fine with that. And that was the comment from Drew when he and I met. He goes, oh, so what you're saying is you don't want the NOAA to respond to any of our calls? And I said, no, not at all. I'm saying whether it's every 6 months, every 3 months, or whatever, go over who responded to what. And if Lake Bluff has come to us more than them, I believe that we should compensate them something for doing that. Everything costs money. That's all I'm saying. At least that's all I'm saying, is to look at the cost of it. And listen, if it's they responded to 100 and we responded to 104, potato. But it seems, at least from what I hear and listen to, it's not. It's a larger amount. So I think all that's coming out of this is look at it, talk about it.
Sure.
Look at what you're responding to. Look at what they really want us to come to. Look at what you really want them to come to. And realize that if there is a fairly decent imbalance, would it be fair to ask for them to come up, or us to come up, or jointly come up with what a fair amount to dispatch and bring us to them or them to us if there's an imbalance. Okay, this is not in any way, shape, or form, in my eyes, meant to be adversarial. It's meant to be, hey, we both have a cost of doing business. We both want to make sure that children are taken care of. I get all of that, Mike, and I'm not saying let little Johnny lay on the ground. That's certainly not it. just kind of look at it. Maybe it's a good time to just kind of revisit everything and talk about it.
Will do.
Is that fair?
I think it makes sense, and personally, I think if it comes back as a true ARA for what it's designed to be, I'm not as concerned about the imbalance, because
Okay.
these are high target areas. If it's gonna come back that we respond to ambulance calls, regardless of what they are, then I think the imbalance needs to be dealt with.
Trustee Snowman, you have any comments?
I think it is important to look at imbalance, but it's not as simple, it's not a simple thing to do. It's not, I don't think this is real transactional, because you've got issues of, the cost can be very, very incremental. We have to, in order to meet the absolute minimum, or I would say the needs of our community, we have to have a certain capacity. A lot of that capacity is excess capacity a lot of times of the day. So it doesn't really cost us
Which
much,
doesn't
except
cost you
maybe-
anything.
It costs, there's just a fuel,
Just,
it's
yeah,
small,
and the people
very
here,
small things.
basically.
But we also do get something, there's training opportunity, you know, I mean, there's working and working with the other departments and having that relationship, so you know each other, you know how it works, so there are intangible benefits there. So it's not as simple as 150 versus 100 from a pure cost perspective. A lot more goes into that, because at a cost perspective, it's not that much money. But what isn't fair is, for example, at the end of every year, if the village intentionally, you know, budgets for less resources, knowing that we're always going to be there for them, that's not right. But I don't think that's really the issue. It is more of a you know, maybe sometimes, you know, you need the cup of sugar, I need the cup of flour, and kind of basis, but because of the nature, and we also, you know, there are a number of things that I think we're seeing transition in the village, from being truly a paid-on-call to more of a paid-on-premise, which I think will naturally rebalance all of this. You know, availability too. When we're available at certain hours, they're more available at other hours. But so all those things work into it. So it isn't really just we did 20 more this month than you did. I think it's important to get a balance, but it's just not. It's not a real simple numbers game.
I mean, we've taken on, obviously, the responsibility of responding to everything in the industrial department. And I understand basically that's because of the train tracks. North Chicago pays us, what, $5,000? And we went 10 calls to them last year?
Well, they're supposed to pay us $5,000.
Yeah, well, they're supposed to pay us $5,000. But there were 10 calls that we responded to in North Chicago.
Part of that, though, too, was because of the de-annexation of property.
Exactly, that's all that has to do with it, from a long time ago.
Right, I remember that.
It's got nothing to do with services rendered.
But at one time, we were responding to an awful lot of calls in North Chicago under Chuck Neasley and the agreement they had there. They were calling us constantly.
I don't think unless it's something really major, we don't call them Chicago.
We used to do that many years ago with Lake Forest and with Libertyville too, run a lot of calls, so.
Again, I just think it's worth revisiting.
Old
It's
stories.
not, you know, it's not, again, it's not adversarial, it's just, let's take a look at it, see where we're at, see where we're needed, see where we're not needed. And again, if Lake Bluff's desire is to have you run every call in the industrial park, and you think that we can handle that, and you want to get into that, we're certainly open to listening to that and letting us know if there's, again, not looking to double our bank account, but if they want us to do that, if there's a cost to that, and you guys can come up with a dollar amount that you think is fair, then let's talk about it.
Okay.
That's all.
I mean, our staffing our station like we do on shift is really what makes us valuable to Lake Bluff. Because if we were relying on volunteers to come into the station to get a vehicle and race out, Lake Forest would probably beat us every
I don't
time.
think it's
used to
like
do
Bluff,
that
I think
for many
it's
years.
it's all
I know
sorts
we
of
do,
years.
yeah. I know.
Yeah, but how many of the volunteers that are in the
That we had
neighborhood,
back
like
then, yeah.
when you were younger?
That's why the system's changed.
I understand, I'm being
Okay.
a little tongue in cheek that, I mean, I remember the day when there was a fire call that, you know, it seemed like 20 people from Knollwood came to the station. It was because it was then, it's not now. And that was then. Times are different. Right, so we are where we are right now, and I agree with Bob. We are, with us staffing the station 24/7, 365 to the tune of, what does it run each year? Our staffing about $125,000 of taxpayer monies, which is, you know, again, a chunk of change.
And I mean, it would really be fairer in terms of if you're gonna talk responses, if Lake Bluff staffed their station with 2 paramedics 24/7.
But I think that starts to get into the agreement that they're offering us. I mean,
Right, but when Lake Bluff comes to us, they have EMTs, and I don't doubt that maybe there are a few paramedics on their staff. But they're not coming with the same type of vehicle, and they're not coming in a position to provide that care to our people as much as what we provide to them when we arrive on the scene. So
As far as
it's
level of service, or like, yes, they have a bunch of paramedics, they're just currently at BLS,
Right.
non-transport
Right.
license.
So they're really not in a position to provide ALS service if they were to come to us on an ambulance call. Correct? But we provide ALS service to them when we go on their ambulance calls.
Correct.
And again, I
So to
totally
be
get it.
fair, I
I'm
mean,
sorry.
we're looking at, what, a $640,000 budget, and I think Lake Bluff is well over 700,000. If they were to say, look, we're gonna position 2 volunteer paramedics, such as what we get here, we're gonna position them in our station 24/7. And we'll respond to your ambulance calls when you have them, and you respond to ours. Now, we're still gonna respond to more of theirs than they respond to ours, but I see it as a more reciprocal type service.
well, you know, going along those lines, if you say, we pay, you know, $120,000, whatever, but we can't, you know, in order to get the coverage, that's what it's gonna cost, whether we're going on calls or not, that's what it's gonna cost. Now, if we can reduce from 3 to 2, because they've got somebody always there, then you're right. But again, that gets into, I think, some of the meat and potatoes of what they put on the table as an offer to us.
Anyway, to look at it, I think it's worth some time.
Will do. All right. Non-agenda items. Anybody have anything that's not on the agenda? Nothing? Nominations, resignations, terminations of members of the Knollwood Fire Department?
Negative.
All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn at 7:38 PM? So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well, sure, these